I've looked at the free cloud services from Amazon Luna and GeForce Now in previous videos, but you know what I've not tried? Paying for them. Well, not Luna. For this video, I've decided to pay for GeForce Now and Xbox Cloud Gaming for a month. A quick caveat for this video, I'm looking at playing games via a Windows laptop with hardwired internet, not over Wi-Fi, rather than the various other devices that both services do run on, which is across PCs, mobile phones, smart TVs, even macOS with GeForce Now, and obviously Xbox consoles for Xbox Cloud Gaming. I did this for two main reasons. One, I wanted to play Power World and my laptop just couldn't manage it. And secondly, I've got a bunch of games that both Amazon and Epic have given away for free that I've not been able to play on my laptop, and of course some games in Steam that only run at low levels of graphics. I'll look at them in turn before finalising my thoughts on them. Let's start off with GeForce Now. This gives you access to playing a select number of games that you already own via Steam, Epic Games, Ubisoft, EA or GOG.com, or so they say. There are 1900 available to play at the time of writing this, and I'd strongly advise checking on their website to make sure the games you want to play are on the list. I did look at the forums a bit after discovering Power World isn't there, and it appears that it's on the developers to make the game available rather than something GeForce Now has to do, which does muddy the waters on how likely games will become available, since it's not down to GeForce Now who actually cares about it being there. I went for the priority membership option, which gives me 6 hours playtime per session, a premium rig and priority access with up to 60 FPS at up to 1080p. Gotta love those up tos, right? It means that if you don't get that, hey, they didn't promise it, so you can't complain. Priority membership cost me £9.74 rather than the $9.99 stated on the UK page, because they actually charge $11.99 and then convert currencies, so the price might vary a little bit depending on the exchange rate. I didn't go for the ultimate option, which is double the price at $19.99, gets you a 4080 rig, couple of hours extra playtime per session, and more up-tos, this time 120 FPS and 4K, which I don't need because one, my monitor can't display it, and two, I don't want to spend the extra money. A $3.99 day pass is available for priority, or $7.99 for the ultimate version, which seems like a huge cost compared to a whole month of access. By the way, you get a discount on the monthly price if you buy 6 months at a time. It effectively gives you 6 months for the price of 5. Importantly, cancelling membership was very easy. It's a straightforward matter of downgrading your membership back down to free to play. I cancelled about a week before the renewal date because I did not want to spend the money for another month, and it was fine. I had access right up until the end date. It didn't charge me anything, it didn't cut down the available time. You can use GeForce Now via a browser or downloadable clients for PC, macOS and Android devices. When I ran it through a browser, it told me the best experience is via the app, so fair enough, I downloaded that, and that's what I tested this out on. Obviously I already had an account from the previous video, so I didn't have to go through and reconnect to the stores, but I didn't remember having the option to add Good Old Games or EA, so I double checked, and no, I can't see the option. Reading on the internet a bit, it does appear that GOG was dropped because there was only 2 games ever available to play. But if that's the case, it's pretty misleading that it's still being advertised if you can't actually add it. A bit of a weird one. Also a bit weird, and not something that I'd seen before I tried this, is that if you do have Xbox Game Pass, you can connect your GeForce Now to the Xbox store and play those games, which was a bit of a surprise, and something I'll talk about a little bit later. The recommended connection speed is actually pretty high at 50 megabits per second, which is more than my 45. So despite having 0% packet loss and 4 milliseconds latency, I got warnings that my connection wasn't up to par. I mean, what do you want from me, GeForce Now? You do get the option to adjust the streaming quality in your settings within the app. And if you have download limits on your internet, you will want to check these settings, because it does give you a rough idea of expected data use. It's quite a lot, by the way. 4 gig an hour at the low end, and it goes up to 11 gig an hour. The list of available games has a lot of titles that really don't need a new rig to play. A few examples that I've already reviewed in the past are games like Beat Cop, Epi Story and Hero's Hour. From my perspective as a PC player, paying for the service to run more demanding games than I can cope with on my PC, these are just filler. I can use them anyway. Of course, there is still value if you want to play these games on like smart TVs or mobile phones. It's just not what I'm looking to do personally, and isn't really the point of this video. Once you've set up all your libraries, you're going to need to go and find the games that you want to play. And this is where GeForce Now really doesn't work that well. Going to the games page gives you the standard list of all the things that are new, all the things that recommend that you play. Clicking the See All button gets you a full list of games, and you can filter it according to My Library, which you think shows you all the games you have access to across all your connected game stores, but it doesn't. If you have Xbox Game Pass linked, it shows all of those but nothing from any other game store. You actually have to find the game first, effectively by knowing which store it's on, and then you run it. And once you've done that, it adds it to the list of your games. If you, say, filter via the Steam library though, I still get games that are in Game Pass, but are not in my Steam library. It's pretty janky. I don't know why it doesn't just show you your available games. You also have to choose which game store you want to open it from, if it's available through multiple ones. So you have to be careful which ones you're running it from. Okay, once you got past all that malarkey, running the games. Let's talk about running the games. The priority queuing definitely works. I never had to wait more than a few seconds, really, for a rig to be found. But running the appropriate game store launcher is no quicker than running like Steam or Epic Game Store usually is on a laptop or PC. It's slow. I sometimes waited up to a couple of minutes for a game to actually start. And I also got the occasional issue with Steam more than Epic Game Store, but both at times, getting themselves mixed up a bit and failing to run, especially if Steam was already running in the background on my laptop. When that happened, I had to shut the session down and start again. Not ideal. It's great to have your saved games that are in the Steam cloud if you run games through the store, but the downside with the GeForce Now service is you do have to wait for synchronization to happen, and it's a bit slower than it normally is on a standard PC. And I was occasionally left with Steam reporting sync errors after the game shut down, though I never noticed any lost data. Once games were up and running, performance varied a little depending on the time of day and the day of the week. Playing in the evening, midweek for some games, had some noticeable lag spikes and dropped frames. The screen capture on my footage is only 30 FPS, so it actually looked better playing it than the footage probably will do. You can see that Valheim drops under 50 FPS for noticeable portions of time. Wasn't the same for all games. Call of the Sea, for example, fared much better at the same time, as did Deathloop. Overall, it was a decent experience playing games at a pretty reasonable 50 to 60 FPS. Games that wouldn't reach double figures for FPS on my laptop. This is important to me especially because I have dozens of supported games in my libraries that I've mostly been given for free but haven't been able to play. Until now. This obviously doesn't apply to everyone, so your mileage may vary here. Okay, on to Xbox Cloud Gaming. This is part of the Xbox Game Pass, but only the upgraded Ultimate version, not the standard Game Pass. That means in the UK, paying $12.99 per month rather than the standard Game Pass cost of $7.99. That's when you select PC games as a primary platform. It's a bit cheaper if you say consoles. It's notable that Xbox Cloud Gaming is clearly marked as a beta version. There is a £1 for 2 weeks deal currently in the UK at the moment, which I would recommend giving a try. I cancelled my membership a few days before the renewal date, as I did with GeForce Now, and it's easy enough to log into your Microsoft account and turn off recurring billing, though it does the annoying thing of having the confirm cancellation button hidden a bit of a scroll down the page, a little bit smaller than the yes, I would like to continue paying for this service thing. Wasn't so keen on that. I did still get the rest of the month that I pay for after cancelling, so I feel like you could get the £1 deal and cancel it pretty much straight away, if the offer's there, and still get the full 2 weeks. Unlike GeForce Now, you don't have the option of running games you own through other game store. But what you get is access to the 450 plus games on Game Pass, plus EA Play membership for some reason. The network requirements are significantly lower than GeForce Now ones, sitting at 20 megabits per second, and the rig you're running on is a simulated Xbox Series X. If you're like me and sitting at PC, you can play via a browser or via the dedicated Xbox app, and I did try both and didn't find a significant difference between the two. One requirement I wasn't initially expecting was a controller, because you can't play any of these games via a keyboard and mouse. I wasn't that keen on it for games like Valheim that I'm used to playing on a keyboard. Though I guess it makes sense that it's an Xbox Series X, of course you have to use a controller. I don't know how well this works for, RTS games for example, so it's something to bear in mind depending on your preferred game genres and how much you play with keyboard and mouse. As mentioned, there's only one game store to connect to, EA Games, which I did not bother with, so it does provide a slightly more streamlined and straightforward route to running your games. Once you've got the app up and running, hit Cloud Gaming option on the right and scroll down and there's your list of games that can be run, which is a pretty respectable 413 out of the 450 Game Pass games at the time of writing, which obviously you can play right away. You don't have to spend any more money to buy them. There's also a significant number here that don't really benefit from running via the cloud. I mean, there's some Xbox 360 titles that my laptop would still be able to run, which obviously doesn't need the extra £5 a month to play via the cloud, but there's also day-and-date release games like Starfield or Power World that really make up for it. Maybe not Power World, because the Xbox version was extremely buggy. It crashed a lot. Part of the game, dungeons, you just couldn't play, which is not a great look for the service. Maybe don't put games on until you know they work really well. Outside of Power World, these games are a major draw for Game Pass, and obviously for cloud gaming. I didn't have any crashes with any of the other games like Starfield or Lies of P. Running the games is more straightforward than GeForce Now. It's a little quicker to load. Valheim took 40 seconds compared to a minute on GeForce Now, for example. And there's no Steam or Epic Games launchers running, which means less chance for something to mess up and fail to run. The service also provides cloud saves for games, and since they're more than likely stored within the same server infrastructure, the sync time felt much quicker, so everything just felt faster and slicker. One really weird little thing that kind of brings down the slickness of the whole xCloud gaming experience is the fact that you can't quit games properly. You actually have to Alt F4 out the games. In general, my experience was the exit menu option, for example, for a lot of them just isn't there. It's so odd. Performance was also affected by the time of day and the day of the week of the game session, though not as much as GeForce Now. Xbox Cloud Gaming seems to have made the decision to keep the frame rate up whenever connection was a little bit slow, but just not bother to put as much graphic detail on. So the graphics got blurry but not slower. I mean, obviously any drop of quality is not ideal, but for me that was the better option for gaming. And I didn't see drops as frequently as I did with GeForce Now. That might be due to the lower bandwidth requirements. Playing a really FPS dependent game like Lies of P at any time of the day actually was fine. Any time I died was due to me being rubbish, not frame stutters or lag, however much I'd like to claim otherwise. Valheim was another example where the games seemed to perform a little bit better on Xbox Cloud. I ran it on both at the same time of day, and xCloud didn't seem to have any frame drops, but GeForce Now did seem to struggle a little, which made me think it wasn't my connection, it was GeForce requirements. Same happened with Deathloop, in fact. The most noticeable, however, was playing Starfield, because, like I said earlier, you can play Game Pass games via GeForce Now. That's not a fair test in my opinion though, because I don't know what jiggery-pokery GeForce Now has to do to talk to Xbox servers and get verifications, but whatever it was doing, it didn't work. The performance was pretty poor. Running directly through xCloud, it was fine. Running through GeForce Now, it was not fine at all. It was basically unplayable. I also had to log into my Microsoft account every time I ran it, which was a bit irritating. It's not meant to work, I don't think, for whatever reason. You also don't get access to every Game Pass games. It was 120 out of the 413 that's available for cloud streaming, so it's not a replacement at all for xCloud access. So, which is best? That's the question. Well, the answer's obviously going to be a bit of a it depends, because they're not providing the same service really. xCloud gaming gives the more polished feeling experience. I had fewer issues with running games in general, and it maintained a more consistent FPS regardless of how high or low the network traffic was. It's not exactly a huge FPS hit on GeForce Now, of course. It was more than usable the majority of the time, and I was happy with the performance of both of them. Having both options available with no other factors, I would choose to play a game on the xCloud, not GeForce Now. But there are other factors to consider, obviously. Having access to the Game Pass games is obviously why Game Pass is so successful, and is a huge tick in favour of xCloud gaming. Getting a 400 plus library of games to stream for $12.99 a month could be all some gamers need, and ironically it goes a long way to replacing the Xbox Series X. Microsoft seem committed to bringing as many of their games to Game Pass as possible, particularly new releases the day it releases. And with nearly 90% of those games available to stream at the moment, for an extra £5 a month over basic Game Pass, that seems reasonable. Why buy a console for £400 or £500 when an extra £5 a month over Game Pass covers the lifetime of that console, and you can still play games at the same quality? On the flip side, having access to the games that you already own with their cloud saves is going to be important for those of us with existing library of games that we want to play via streaming. I choose to play Valheim on GeForce Now because all of my progress is on Steam, and I don't want to start again on xCloud. Not starting again is worth the occasional 10 FPS drop to me. However, that is only if the games that you want to play are in the list of the 1900 supported games, and less than half of my admittedly limited Steam collection is in that list. The ability to play new games is a factor. A few are going to be on Game Pass, but most aren't, because Microsoft, regardless of what it seems like, don't own every single developer in the world yet. But it's not really giving that much of an advantage to GeForce Now at the moment. A lot of the newest games aren't on their list either. Let's take a hugely popular game at the time of writing, Helldivers 2. That's not available on either. Let's go back a couple of years. Elden Ring. That's not available. The idea of having GeForce Now to play all the latest games via streaming is not realistic currently. GeForce Now needs more developers to do whatever it is that they need to do to make their games available on the platform, especially these new releases. I don't know what Nvidia needs to do to encourage that. I suspect GeForce Now isn't a significant enough platform for development teams to bother spending any time on right now, but it does limit the appeal of this service. On the other side, Xbox Cloud is Game Pass, and it's not going to be anything except what's on Game Pass. Both are limited, so I think it's fair to say neither of them really replace the need for a decent gaming PC if you want to play the latest and greatest games. Before my final conclusion, let me reiterate that I'm only testing out one use case: cloud gaming on a home-wired laptop. I'm not using this on hotel Wi-Fi connection or running it on a smart TV or mobile because I can't travel and I don't have the kit to get anything else running. So there could be issues with those setups that I don't know about. Solely from my testing, I would say the tech for GeForce Now and xCloud Gaming both work well enough to justify the cost, with the Xbox Cloud coming out ahead tech-wise. You have to check that the games that you want to play are available on whatever service you're considering before you give the company any money at all. Honestly, it was pretty disappointing to find out Power World wasn't on GeForce Now. If I really had to choose just one to carry on paying for, and I'm not paying for either of them, by the way, I'd pick Xbox Cloud Gaming. Game Pass is just too many games, some of which are going to be brand new big titles, that I don't have to front up any more money for, that it's just too hard to pass up. Especially given that so many new games just aren't going to be on GeForce Now. Having said that, if you've got a load of games and GeForce Now covers all the ones that you care about, the service is fine. The service works. I'm not going to discourage anyone from basically jumping on and getting either of these. Okay, on that bombshell, I'm off. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon. Goodbye.